Chapter 13. Guards poured into the room. Harriet grabbed August's arm. "Run!" The first guard was just a bit slow in getting in their way. Harriet dodged around him and dove for the open doorway where Wilbur was waiting. He had a burlap sack in one hand. He started to say something, but Harriet snatched it from him, saying, Thank you, Wilbur. You are the best. Now get out of here," and tore down the hallway with August hot on her heels. "Where are we going?" "I don't know yet." "Stop them," yelled the Mouse King, somewhere behind them. They skidded into the gray hallway and saw guards at the end, 3 deep in front of the door to the outside. Harriet hadn't really expected them to leave the door unguarded, but she'd been hoping. There were too many guards to fight. Somebody might get hurt. It might even be her. "Why did I ever stop being invincible?" she muttered, pulling August into a blue room. She yanked the bag open and pulled out a can. 3 mouse guards dressed in blues appeared in the doorway. "Stop!" cried the first guard. "In the name of His Majesty!" cried the second guard. "The Mouse King!" cried the third guard. "Like I was going to forget," snapped Harriet, popping the lid off the paint can and splashed the paint toward the door. Sploosh! The paint was brilliant purple, the color of a radioactive grape. It ran down the guards' blue clothes, over their armor, and stuck to their fur. One tried to take a step forward, and the other 2 grabbed him by the arms. "We can't go into the blue room now," said one. "We'll clash," hissed the second. "If the king catches us in one of the blue rooms looking like this, he'll hang us up by our tails." Harriet let out a sigh of relief. "You thought of everything," cried August admiringly. "I hope so," said Harriet. "Now run before we run out of paint." She flung hot pink paint on the guards that tried to chase them into the green room, and bright blue paint on the guards coming through the doorway of the magenta room. She poured vivid orange paint down from a balcony onto the heads of 2 guards and a butler, who had the bright idea of wearing black. Since very few things go with vivid orange, the 3 were forced to take shelter behind a curtain and wait for someone to come back with a change of clothes. Why did I become a butler? I could have done anything with my life, but no, I became a butler. At last, with only 1 can of paint to spare, the 2 princesses reached the staircase leading up to the princess's tower. "If we go up there, we'll be trapped," said August dubiously. "Not quite," said Harriet. "Go, I've got a plan." August ran up the stairs. Harriet ran after her, stopping only to pour the last can of paint, a particularly offensive shade of olive, down the steps behind her. "What do we do now?" asked August as Harriet slammed the door to the bedroom closed. She could hear the locks and chains rattling on the other side and wished she had a way to lock them. "Bar the door," she said instead. "They'll be here soon." "What do we bar the door with?" asked August, looking down the long gallery where the princesses slept. "Furniture." 12 narrow beds and 12 wooden trunks made a very effective wooden barricade. Working together, August and Harriet had 3 beds piled in front of the door by the time the guards came clattering up the stairs. "Let us in," shouted the guards, banging on the door. The door slammed against the pile of wooden bed frames and didn't open. "More furniture," cried Harriet. "I always hated this end table," said August, flinging the hated table onto the pile. "It's not an end table, it's a barricade." "I don't know, Your Majesty, they've blocked it somehow." August shouted the Mouse King through the door. "August, you stop playing with that awful hamster and open the door this minute." "You want me to marry a mole," August shouted back, "and he's an okay mole, but we're just friends, all right?" You'll marry whom I tell you to marry, shouted the Mouse King. You'll understand when you're older. Harriet shoved the last of the wooden trunks into the pile of furniture. The Mouse King was clearly not good at talking to his daughter. In fact, any minute now he was going to say, "It's for your own good," said the Mouse King. Harriet winced. Nobody, mouse or hamster or battle quail, likes to be told that something nasty is for their own good. If marrying moles is so great, then you marry one. That's actually the best idea yet. He and Mole Zelda obviously have a lot in common. They could organize things alphabetically together. You open this door right now. August turned away from the door, her chest heaving. I'm not marrying Gemini, she said angrily. I'm not. That's the spirit, said Harriet. Help me with this rope. Rope? Harriet pulled the last item out of the sack. A good rope, said Harriet, is the adventuring princess's best friend. After a battle quail and a sword and a friend like Wilbur. Are we going to climb down it? Asked August. But how do we fit through the bars? She glanced at the window. The space between the bars was not wide enough for even a very small mouse princess, let alone Harriet, who was a very solid little hamster. Harriet tied the rope around the bars twice and secured one end to a bedpost. The other, much longer end, she fed through the bars and out the window. August frowned. But how? Something yanked on the rope twice. Harriet grinned. August rushed to the window. 40 feet down, Wilbur stood between Mumphrey and Hyacinth. He had finished tying the rope to a harness and gave a thumbs up to August in the window. You thought of everything, cried August. Harriet waved her hand. This isn't my first adventure, she began. The floor heaved sideways. August was thrown against the windowsill. Harriet caught herself and turned. The trap door to the underground passage had appeared in the middle of the floor, and as they watched, the door began to rise. Chapter 14. The enchanted stairs, August gasped. What do we do now? Said Harriet, blinking. I hadn't thought of that. But you thought of everything, cried August. I think I'm doing pretty well, considering. The door opened wide enough for them to see the gleam of light from Mozelda's claws. Harriet flung herself on the trapdoor, slamming it back down. There was a muffled curse from below. Open this door, yelled Mozelda from the other side. Open it at once. Open this door, yelled the Mouse King from the hall. Do you want me to pull now? Yelled Wilbur. Do something, yelled August. Will everybody please shut up, yelled Harriet. Yelling at people to stop yelling is never very effective. The Mouse King continued pounding on the door, and Mozelda continued pounding on the trap door. Think, Harriet, she told herself. Think. This is also not very effective. Fortunately, at that moment, Wilbur decided he should probably be pulling. The rope snapped taut. There was a creak and a groan, and a great deal of stone dust fell from the ceiling. For a moment, it looked like the combined weight of two quails wouldn't be enough. Harriet, realizing that she hadn't thought of everything, began to worry that she hadn't thought enough about anything. What is going on in there? Shrieked the Mouse King. The bars held. The mortar around them did not. Crash! There was suddenly a gaping hole where the window used to be. August put her hands over her mouth in alarm. The end of the rope that had been tied to a bedpost jerked taut and began pulling the whole bed toward the window. Grab that rope, cried Harriet. There was a loud thud from the door. The pile of furniture shook. August squeaked. Oh, Goody, they brought a battering ram. Thud, thud, thud. Let us in, shouted the Mouse King, or we'll break the door down. Molzelda hammered on the underside of the trap door. Open this door, she shouted, or I'll break the floor open. Bang, 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 went the Mole Witch's claws on the wood. August, said Harriet very calmly, now would be an awesome time to start climbing down that rope. Harriet took a deep breath. She let it out. She counted to 5 while the battering ram slammed into the door and Molzelda pounded against the trap door. 1, 2, 3, 4. The door fell off its hinges. The guards holding the battering ram ran into the wall of furniture. The Mouse King screamed with rage. 5. Harriet dove off the trap door and ran for the window. Move those beds, yelled the Mouse King. Aha, cried Molzelda, flinging the trap door open. She emerged into the room just as the guards, still holding the battering ram, plowed through the furniture and ran right over the top of her. Slam! Ah! Where is that wretched hamster? Shouted the Mouse King. Oof! Yelled Molzelda. Harriet grabbed the rope, flung herself over what was left of the windowsill, and was gone. Are you all right? Cried Wilbur as Harriet climbed down the rope. Never better, gasped Harriet. Doing great. Get August on that quail. The Mouse King's head appeared in the ruined window. Stop her, he shouted. Cut the rope. Climb down the rope. Pick one, you idiots. There was a brief confusion among the guards. Harriet decided not to risk matters, aimed for Mumphrey's saddle, and let go of the rope. Quirk! Sorry, Mumphrey, said Harriet, having landed hard on the quail's back. Wilbur climbed onto Hyacinth and pulled August up behind him. Now what? Aren't you the stable boy? Asked Harriet. He's also a prince, said Harriet. A great prince. Best prince I know. I'm not marrying you, said August, putting her arms around Wilbur and hanging on tight. No offense. I'm really okay with that, said Wilbur. No offense. The guards were sliding down the rope now, having apparently decided against cutting it. As long as we've sorted out who's not marrying who, said Harriet. Let's ride. She squeezed Mumphrey with her knees, and he took off across the lawn. Stop them, shouted the Mouse King from the window. The ground began to boil. Molzelda erupted from the ground, looking very much the worse for wear. Boys, stop them! More molehills appeared all over the lawn. Gemini popped up from one, looked at Harriet, looked at his mother, and said, Stop who, Mom? Them, cried Molzelda. Her, the hamster, and the mouse. That's your future wife. She doesn't seem very interested, Mom. The 2 quails pounded across the lawn. More moles dug their way up through the grass, looking puzzled. Where are we going? Shouted Wilbur. I can't go far, cried August. There'll be an earthquake. That's what I'm counting on, said Harriet. If you leave the area of the spell, I'm pretty sure it'll break. Otherwise, why would she be trying to stop you? There was a surprisingly thoughtful silence for somebody riding a galloping quail. Huh, said August. Makes sense. Stop them! Guards ran after them. Moles converged on them. None of them arrived in time. Hyacinth, the quail, carrying Wilbur the prince and August the princess, crossed some invisible line. The earth began to dance. Chapter 15. Harriet pulled Mumphrey to a stop, and Hyacinth stopped next to him. It was a small earthquake at first. The guards looked around uncertainly. Slates rattled from the castle roof. Harriet jumped down from Mumphrey and waved to one of the moles. "Which one are you?" Ares, ma'am," said the mole, saluting. He seemed very confused by the entire situation. Harriet didn't plan to give him time to figure it out. "Get your brother," she said. "Go back in the castle and pull everyone still inside into the tunnels. The tower is probably going to come down in a minute, and there may be some damage to the rest of the castle. Gemini told me you could do it in 3 minutes. "Yes, ma'am." "We're going to knock the castle down?" said Wilbur, shocked. "Well, probably not the whole palace," said Harriet. "The tower is where the magic's connected." "Yes," said August, punching her fist in the air. "I hate that tower." The earthquake was starting to pick up steam now. A few rocks fell out of the walls and plunked to the ground. One of the lower windows into a blue room by the color cracked. It was obvious that the worst of the shaking was in the tower that held the princess's bedroom. Stones were raining from the hole where the quail had yanked the window out. "Hopefully we won't have to knock it all down," said Harriet. She cupped her hands around her mouth. "Hey, your majesty! Either you agree to let the princesses marry who they want, or we bring that tower down around your ears." "I won't agree to this," shouted the king out the window. "Neither do I," cried Mozelda. "Boys, bring me that mouse. Don't let her leave the bounds of the spell." There was an awkward pause. Mozelda looked around, adjusted her battered hat. Boys?" "They're getting everyone out of the castle, just in case," said Wilbur. "It's very noble of them." "They're good boys," said Mozelda vaguely. "They always do what their mother tells them. Who are you?" "Nobody in particular," said Wilbur. "Just a prince. Ignore me." The earthquake was really rolling now. More windows broke. From inside the castle came a loud bell as somebody pulled the fire alarm. Harriet gritted her teeth. "Come on," she said under her breath. "Come on, Gemini, get everybody out. We can't knock down a palace full of people." Harriet had some very unusual notions of princessly behavior, but flattening innocent civilians was definitely not something princesses did, even if the squishy future of the hamster kingdom was at stake. She was very nearly sure, based on where the cavern had been located, that the tower was the only thing that would fall down. But if she was wrong... A fountain of earth erupted next to them, and Gemini came out, dragging a guard behind him. "More in there," he gasped, and dove back into the earth like a fish into water. What just happened? Harriet and Wilbur scrambled to the hole. The faces of a half-dozen mice covered in dirt looked up at them. Harriet counted the butler, a cook, and 2 more guards. She gave the cook a hand up. "Stop that," yelled the Mouse King. "Get back here. Deserters!" "You can stop this," shouted Harriet. "August, tell them." "I'm not going to marry Gemini, Dad. Get out of the castle." The shaking intensified. The Mouse King clutched at the windowsill to keep his balance. More moles came out of the earth, leading more mice behind them. Princesses and guards straggled across the lawn, hand in hand. Ares the mole looked around, saw Harriet, and saluted again. "Everyone's out, ma'am, except the king." "What now?" asked August, inching toward the palace. The earthquake slowed but didn't stop. Harriet sighed. "When I said I was going to bring the tower down around his ears," she said, I was really hoping to do it more metaphorically. She waved August forward. The rumbling in the earth began to quiet. You can't tell me what to do, screamed the Mouse King. I am the king. The princesses were coming toward them, gathering around August. Harriet looked from mouse to mouse. They were all dirty from climbing through the tunnels, but on every face was an identical expression of determination. I haven't been out of the palace this far in years, said January. I've never been out of the palace, piped up December. Do you want to go back? Asked Harriet, because frankly, I'd just as soon knock the whole place down, but you live there. I think the spell will break if you go far enough from the symbol underground, but I can't swear the castle won't fall down first. The princesses looked at one another. A home you can't leave is a prison. We slept in a room with bars on the windows. I'd rather go anywhere else in the world than back there. Harriet smiled. Aries, she called. Gemini, go get the king. No, you don't, snapped Mozelda. Harriet drew in a breath. She'd almost forgotten the Mole Witch. Now listen here. No, you listen. Mozelda pointed a heavy claw at the Mouse King. That man is the first person I've met who understands the importance of color-coding library books. I will get him out of that castle. And she dove into her burrow while Harriet stood with her mouth hanging open. I thought she just wanted the princesses to power her spells, she said. I didn't realize she'd be interested in the Mouse King. On the other hand, she did name her sons after the signs of the zodiac. Maybe she and the Mouse King were meant for each other. See, you don't think of everything. Quiet, you. It did not take very long at all. A determined Mole Witch can move through earth faster than a quail can run. You will get back here, the Mouse King was yelling, and you will be grounded for the rest of your lives until the wedding, and then grounded some more, and then yerk. The yerk was the sound he made when Mozelda came up through the trap door and grabbed him. September giggled. The sound of the giggle had barely faded from the air when Mozelda delivered the furious, bedraggled Mouse King onto the lawn. There, said Harriet with satisfaction. Everybody's out. The princesses looked at one another. Come on, said August to her sisters, and all 12 of them joined hands. They walked across the lawn, away from the castle. The tower fell down behind them with a crash that rattled windows a mile away, and not a single one of the princesses looked back.